We're now going to go ahead and build the user profile page, which will hit a different controller, which we'll call profile controller, and will allow us to pass in a username to a URL and access information about that user and display it on the page. So already we have pretty URLs, so there's not really much work to do here. The reason we're creating a separate profile controller is we're looking to the future. We could have different calls to this controller. You might want to have lots of different methods within this controller to do different things. So we'll separate this logic, and just so it's not housed under the sort of / account domain, if you like. So how do we want this to work? Well, we want this to be whatever our domain name is / user and then the user's name. At the moment, obviously, we're returning a not found HTTP exception. It's throwing that error. That's because we haven't even built it yet. So what we're going to now do is go ahead and we're going to add a new route. We're going to add a new controller. We're obviously going to go ahead and create some views and just output this. It's a lot simpler than you might think. So we're not going to house our route under authenticated or not authenticated. We're going to allow anyone to access this user profile. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to say route get. So it's always going to be a get request. And we'll go ahead and define what the URL is, which is / user, and then the username. So remember, we're using curly brackets here to denote that we want to be able to pass a value to this URL. We'll then go ahead and create our array, and we'll go ahead and name this. And this is going to be profile-user. And then we want to slightly differently use a different controller, which we haven't built yet. That's going to be called profile controller. The method is going to be called user. So let's quickly go over to our controllers folder within app and go ahead and create a new folder. A new file. And we'll go ahead and define this all out. Just go ahead and get rid of that. So let's save this out as profile controller.php and class profile controller extends base controller. So we know that it needs to extend our base controller as we have done with all of our other controllers. Okay, so now we have that one method in there that we spoke about, which is the user method. So it's a public function user, and in there we are able to provide a username. So within this controller, what we want to do is look up the user by their username, check if they exist. If they don't exist, we want to throw a 404 error. And if they do exist, we want to go ahead and render a view passing in this object, this user object. So not very many lines of code here at all. Let's go ahead and just return a view make, and that will be, say, profile.user, which we haven't created yet. Let's go ahead and create that view now. So let's create a new folder called profile, and within this let's go ahead and create a new file called user.blade.php, and let's go ahead and make sure this extends our our layout. So layout.main, and we have a section here, remember, which is the content. Stop that, and we'll just say user profile, just so we can test the output. Cool, so let's go ahead and say user Alex. Perfect, so there we go, we're returning this user profile. Everything's set up except the fact we're not taking this value provided and actually doing anything with it yet. So let's go ahead and do that now. So inside of the profile controller, what we want to go ahead and do is up here create a variable. And we want to assign this to, again, the user model. This time we're not using find or anything, we're going to use the where method, and this is going to say where username is equal to username. Okay, so now what we want to do is check how many results have been returned. If no results have been returned, no user's been found, so we can sort of abort the app and pass a 404 error. So here's the if statement. We only want to make the view if the user's been found, so this actually needs to go within this check here. Obviously the check needs to be user, and we use the count method on this object returned, and then we can go ahead and return the view. Now down here, the last sort of case, we want to go ahead and say app abort, and we want to pass in the error code, so 404. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this out. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Nothing changes because that user's available. Remember, we have this user here with the username Alex. Let's go ahead and change this and see what happens. Billy. And there we go. We've got a not found HTTP exception thrown. And you can see the code here within Laravel that relates to it. If code equals 404, throw a not found exception, which makes sense. So now that we know that it works for users that exist, we can go ahead and actually pass in the data that we need to this view to be able to access it within the view. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and use the first method to get the first record back. Although we've only selected one record, we still need to use this method. So I'm going to say user equals user first, and that will just bring back the first user, or the first record returned from that query here. And then pass to the view with user and the user object. And by passing this user object, what we can do then is within the view actually access this object information. So what we can now do is say user username, and we'll put this, I don't know, in a paragraph, whatever. So now when we refresh, we get the user's username out, and we could do, say, another line and do user email, or in brackets, I think would probably be nicer. So yeah, we can do user email, and there we are. So that's it. You can obviously decorate the user's profile with whatever information you want, because in this case all we're doing is we're not storing a lot of information in here, so we're just outputting a bit of information to test that. But generally that's how we go ahead and we create user profiles. We've created a new controller. We've found a user by username within the root by defining a username here, and we've gone ahead, checked that user exists, returned it to the view, and gone ahead and output that to the visitor.